We'll be monitoring the chat box. We also have another one of our leadership coaches, Jen, on as well. She'll be chiming in throughout. And so any questions you have, feel free to put them there. We'll save time at the end for Q&A, and we'll let Betsy take it away. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jill, and welcome everybody. And seconding Jill, it's so much fun to see people joining us today from all over the United States. I'm actually a Chicagoan, based in the city, but leading the webinar today from Michigan. So we'll add another state to the roster here. Feedback is just such a huge topic. And toward that end, we're lucky enough to have Jill on the line, who's another coach at Ama La Vida. We have Brittany, who's an integral part of our team at Ama La Vida. And I'm lucky to have persuaded Jen Maynard, another one of our leadership coaches, to join in today. Both she and I and several other of our leadership coaches spend quite a bit of time talking about giving and receiving feedback. And I'll even go so far as to say, while many of you are joining us, I'm sure, wearing your professional hat, a lot of the lessons that come from this interactive conversation that we hope to have with you today may be relevant in your personal lives as well. So if examples come up, questions or ideas about interacting with significant others in your life, whether they be parents, friends, children, spouses, partners, etc., that's fair game for this conversation. So off we go. Sorry, y'all. There we go. So since there's so many of you new to Ama La Vida, let me tell you a little bit about our company. Ama La Vida means love your life. And we truly believe that it takes some combination of work, family, health, and just a big picture around everything going on in your life to make a full and rewarding life. And so with each of our clients, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out where the opportunities for growth are, whether they be career, leadership, life, the biggest category of all, and or your health. And we have coaches who have unique capabilities and experience in all of those areas. At Ama La Vida, we have a sort of proprietary model where we offer our clients an opportunity to join us for coaching via a membership model. And once you become a membership, purchase a membership to Ama La Vida, you have access to all of our online curriculum, in addition to your one-on-one coaching with your personal coach. Your personal coach, again, may be a specialist in either career, leadership, life, or health. And one of the unique things that we offer is an opportunity to have what we call celebrity sessions with a coach in a different area. So if you decide to join us and try to figure out the best way to elevate your impact and your leadership professionally, you may stumble into an area around something else that's going on in your life, or perhaps your health. And together with your coach, you will decide perhaps to have a session or two with a different coach who's part of Ama La Vida to explore that topic. And then you can come back and rejoin your the coach that you began with. So we'll talk more about that as we go forward. The two people in this picture are the two women who founded Ama La Vida. In this picture, you can see they were both pregnant. They've both had new babies since then. And their names are Nicole Wood and Forum Sheth. And over time, they conduct webinars. They do quite a bit of writing on our Ama La Vida blog, and you'll hear from them via our newsletter as well. So just a peek at a couple other people who made this company happen. This is me. I'm Betsy. I'm a leadership coach. I've been with Ama La Vida for about 1.5 years at this point. I came to Ama La Vida through a corporate career and ended up becoming a coach when I decided that I was ready to sort of explore what makes people tick, both personally and professionally. feel free to link me on LinkedIn. My profile is up there and you can learn more about what's led me to coaching and what my background is. So we'll spend just a couple more minutes on logistics today. Then we'll really start exploring what it is that makes feedback tricky, both in our personal and professional experiences, receiving feedback, but giving feedback as well. And it's such a common topic to feel anxious or stressed about wanting to be really good at accepting and receiving feedback. So we'll talk about what tools we can put into place to understand better what's going on. We'll share a feedback framework that we use at Ama La Vida, and amusingly today, Jen and I are even talking about making modifications to that framework as we move forward. So we're really interested in hearing all of you and your feedback about our feedback framework. So don't hesitate to chime in with questions in the chat as we go, or your ideas, and both Jen and Jill will help me moderate and make my way through trying to answer all of those questions. We'll distinguish today the difference between preparing to give feedback and actually giving the feedback, implementing the feedback. A tool we use for validating understanding to make sure that you and the person with whom you're sharing feedback are on the same page and have a plan for moving it forward. And then we'll wrap up just telling you a little bit more about the coaching at Ama La Vida, and certainly try to make time to answer your questions and or get your ideas. So don't hesitate to chime in, please. We are recording the session today. I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of that. Please feel free to go to our bit.ly link for more events. We have all kinds of events coming up all the time, and almost all of them are complimentary, i.e. you do not need to pay any money to join us. Please do everything you can to clear space to be present during the time that you've committed to being in this session. If you need to close your eyes or go run and get a cup of coffee, or stand up and sit back down, or go step outside, or whatever it may be aware enough to decide what it's going to take for you to pay attention. One of the things we ask and remind everybody is that in many companies, there is a development budget for each employee, and coaching is often part of that budget. So if this content that we cover today starts to entice you to think about what it would be like to have a coach, to dig deeper into issues around your leadership and your growth as a leader, we're glad to share resources with you about how to make that happen, and or send you a blog post that gives some templates and ideas around making that happen. So don't hesitate to ask us about that. And then last but not least, here's a link to schedule a free strategy session with me. If I'm lucky enough that many of you decide to join and ask for a complimentary strategy session, Jen and or Brittany and I may also refer you to other leadership coaches on the team for that complimentary 30-minute session. Okay, we'll keep moving forward. Sorry, my slide thing is moving slowly. So how many of you think you're just very open to feedback? How many think it's easy to just sit back and have somebody tell you the way it really is? I think a lot of us feel we're ready for that we want it. We know the benefits. We're not going to get any better or learn or really understand what people are thinking if we can't receive feedback. And then how many of you end up in that place down below? Sure, I'll take feedback that I can get defensive about and then ultimately ignore. And what does that defensiveness look like? For me, what I experience both myself, with my family, and with my clients is a quick excuse. Oh, well, I didn't know that, so of course I XYZ. Or you hadn't made that clear. Or, well, there's a reason why I said it that way. What are some of the things that might be coming up for you about your instant reaction to receiving feedback? Oh yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Well, we're just getting lots of great chat in the chatterbox.
Okay, good. I'm
But
looking
yeah, a
on
lot
it.
of
Yeah.
people, it's tempting, not to get defensive. And maybe even if I do receive it well, it's still uncomfortable. And then what's my body reaction? And then now in this day and age of Zoom, and we're just in our little square in our little box, how does my face show up? Does my body language change? All of that. So
Great.
lots of good chatter for sure.
Great. And I'll just share a personal anecdote. My sister, who happens to be a psychologist, gave me a little bit of personal feedback on a topic just this weekend. And I was in the middle of creating this presentation, and I felt my heart clench up before I decided to accept the feedback and try to get better around the topic, which I will not bore all of you with. But even in the midst of creating this presentation, it was really easy for me to want to put up a defense. Well, I didn't know that, or I thought something else. So being very, very aware of our own experience with receiving feedback is the biggest thing that helps us be better at giving feedback. So I'll just toss that your way for consideration. We have access to a PwC study that shows that 60% of people who were polled, and this was in a working environment, said they want more feedback from their team, their employer, the people who work for them, the people who they work for, etc. And only 30% get the feedback that they actually want. You can see there's a huge gap here, and something to consider as you can explore your own leadership and growing your team. So what makes giving feedback tricky? And I don't even know if tricky is a strong enough word. Anxiety provoking, stressful, for some of us, even something we just completely avoid. So I see somebody, Arja, I don't know how to pronounce your name, I apologize, but yes, we need to be in the right headspace. If someone asks you about feedback, you have to shift gears and get into listening mode. You may have to take that deep breath we talked about in the beginning of this session and take your whole persona down a bit to be ready to hear what they have to say. Faith, my boss never gives feedback. We can talk a little bit and save that question towards the end, which is, how do you ask somebody to give you feedback? How do you explain to them that you're open to receiving feedback? There are other things, and Jen, you can chime in from the comments. I'm trying to kind of stay focused on facing forward to all of you. But for me, one of the things that giving feedback tricky is we want to be liked. What if giving feedback makes people think we're a jerk, or the B word for many of us who are women, or the A word for many of us who are male? What if we're not 100% sure if the feedback is merited? What if we're concerned that the person really, something's going on that we don't understand, and that we face them with something that makes us take a step back? I see that some people are saying they want to be a people pleaser. Yes. Heather wrote in, I read an article about asking for advice is better than feedback. I really want to chat with everybody around that. You'll see when we get to our model, Heather, that as leaders, we feel very strongly that there's a big difference between getting feedback, asking for advice, and helping people grow. And so if you shift your perspective from the things that make you afraid to give feedback to the opportunity to be an amazing leader by helping other people grow, suddenly feedback may feel more accessible. Jen, anything else in the chat that we should throw in here?
I mean, I feel like we could have a conversation for days just on this great stuff in the chat. It's fabulous. No, I would say keep reading what everyone else is writing. And you guys are even welcome to kind of coach each other or give a little advice back and forth within the chat. And Betsy and I will pull on some of that. Betsy, I just wanted to mention, because I think it's so relevant to this conversation. Yesterday, the day before, I don't know, the days are blurring together, but this week you called me and said, Jen, I have some feedback I'd like to give you. And we had one of these conversations and it was great. But it was, I cue that up to say what a lot of people here are saying, like, where you doing that kind of gave me that moment of like, that little bit of like pause for a minute, like, okay, I'm about to do few, but then it's like, okay, I'm ready for this. Like, it was sort of like the inhale and then the exhale. And then it was great. And we had great dialogue and we really got to a good place. And I mean, it was just fabulous. So I just think that was
you.
a good example of real life.
Yeah. And guys, Jen's making a really good point. And I don't know if I did this, but when we get to the model, there will be more of this, which is in a casual situation like that, it's often very helpful to ask the person, can I give you feedback? And then the person will say, hopefully, yes, or this isn't a good time. I mean, you'll manage your way around that. And then you are able to approach the feedback knowing that they've decided to be ready to hear it. So I think that's what Jen is basically saying. We did not have a planned meeting. This was just in conversation. So asking, can I give you feedback? Would it be helpful now? Is a really good thing to do. Shada, and again, anybody whose name I'm mispronouncing, I just apologize in advance. You can call me something kooky if you want to. But that new Brene Brown podcast that just came out, and I can't remember the name of the gentleman she interviews, but it is about the big difference between giving and or asking for advice and using powerful questions. And if you stay tuned for our webinars, I can promise you we'll do one around powerful questions as well, which is all in the context of helping people grow, your role as a leader in helping them grow. So this is just a starting list on why is it so hard, in addition to all of the things that you guys are throwing out there. You can grow this list yourself. I am noticing that one person wrote, it can be really hard to hear feedback especially if you really feel if it's not positive and you think it's an area that you already feel you're strong in. And in that case, what I challenge you to do is ask yourself, is there still room for me to grow in this place? Is there still something that I could be learning? Those kinds of questions. Thanks for the advice, Trap Shada. I appreciate that. I recommend everybody check out that Brene Brown thing. It was, gosh, I think it was just last week or even maybe this weekend, very recently. So if this is such a tough area and puts us all so sort of on our toes, how do we get open about giving and receiving feedback? Well, it's sort of what I was talking about a moment ago, which is getting into that learner's mindset. What might I not already understand? What information could I use that might make me better at doing my job? How might I have a blind spot that someone else is helping me with? Or how might I take on a partner who can help me get my work done better? You guys may come up with a million other examples, but at Ama La Vida, we think feedback is a gift. We think withholding feedback, like some of you have mentioned in the culture where you work, is absolutely one of the most difficult stumbling blocks that might exist. How weird is it to try to move your way through your work, guessing what somebody needs you to do, guessing how you might satisfy the needs of the people on your team better, hoping that the way you write is effective and helping other people understand the direction that you're heading in? How crazy does that make you, and how much time is wasted? And like somebody said a few minutes ago in the chat, what if the worst outcome is that you either get fired or you have to fire somebody who might have been able to step up to the occasion and do an amazing job with just a little bit of feedback? So it really, really matters. At Ama La Vida, we consider feedback to be most available to either reinforce a behavior, positive feedback, or to change a behavior, modify a behavior, grow a behavior, constructive feedback. We always like to practice positioning. This is how I think things could be better. How do you think you could change or modify this situation? What might you have done differently to get to the same outcome? So we try to use those open-ended questions to help people think on their own about how to get to a place that feels comfortable for them, maybe stretches them, but also is aligned with the goals and the reason that they are there to do their work. We believe that feedback is mandatory for ourselves to get better, for us to be better contributors to our team, and for us to move to the next level in our career. I'm going to take a moment to just digest a little bit. Does anybody else want to chime in now about anything that's really important about positive feedback and or what we'll call constructive feedback? Thanks, Alyssa. And if I start going too quickly, chat me up there. Both Jen and I have a tendency to talk quickly, and we've both gotten feedback on that. So thank you for acknowledging that. Great. So your goal when you're giving feedback is to use it in the other person's best interest. To do that, you need to provide that feedback in a way where the person receiving it can receive it, is most receptive to it. So I'll tell you a little story. I have a client. She leads a team, a legal team, and we were talking about giving and receiving feedback. And I challenged her because her concern was that her feedback was all just, you should do this, you should do that, a tactical list of things to get done. And she felt that wasn't effective. So I challenged her to go and meet with the individuals on her team and to ask them, how do you like to receive feedback? What puts you in a place where you're most receptive to feedback? And her big takeaways were several. One, no one had ever been asked that question before. Two, at least half the people didn't even know how they were best able to receive feedback. So they had to take some time to think about it. And third, and importantly for her, she said, I guess I always just decided to give feedback in the way that was most comfortable for me. How many of you recognize any of those three or perhaps more mindsets around feedback? I see Hiju. I like the suggestion. Is it all right if I give you some feedback to prep the mood? Great, wonderful. Anybody else? How many of you have ever tried asking, or have you been asked, how do you best receive feedback? So I'll give you some categories on the spot. If you see something going wrong, just please give me the feedback right away. Now we're all on Zoom and starting to go back to the office, many of us, but can I interrupt you? Can I text you when you're presenting? Can I ask you, like I'm asking all of you now, to tell me to slow down if I'm going too fast via chat? Or is it better if I wait and have you tell me later, Betsy was great, but she went too fast and I lost half of what she said? I'd rather have you interrupt me now. I really would. Do you want to receive feedback in writing? Do you want your feedback to be formal? Do the people that you're working with want you to sit down with them face to face when we're all able to do that in an official one-on-one session? Or can they drop by your office and just mention to you that they're noticing something that's going on? One of the things that Jen and I often use with our clients in tricky feedback situations is a phrase. Hey, Jen, here's what I'm noticing. And I think that's exactly how I positioned the feedback I gave to Jen earlier this week. I'm noticing my reaction to what you asked is this. I'm noticing that this might put other people on the spot, etc. So it wasn't a right or a wrong. It was just a noticing. Okay.
And Betsy, I just want to add to that because I think it's such a great point that you just shared there. And I kind of said something in the chat too, because so many of us haven't been asked that great question, which you and I coach all of our leaders to go ask, which is how do you like to receive feedback? But that also doesn't mean that you can't share that out. You can kind of take the stance and, hey, Betsy, you know how I really love to receive feedback is on the phone, direct, like I can still proactively share that with you. And because we've kind of done some of that with our team internally, we already know that we're going to have those safe spaces to have those conversations. So you can be the proactive one too and tell your leader, I really love feedback to come in the form of X, whatever it is for you that really resonates with you.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Jen, I'm noticing Alyssa is giving us a long chat, but I'm not going to read it because I'm going to keep the ball rolling here. This template that you see here is a model, and this is the model I referred to a few minutes ago that Jen and I are constantly considering modifying, but we'll use it for today. But please lean in if you notice something that you think we could say better, add, or take away from this model. So the first thing we think about is what we're calling reiterate their identity. In other words, who am I talking to? What is my relationship with that person? What is our current relationship in the work that we're doing? And what do I want to make sure they walk away knowing, thinking about, considering? We are not attacking the person's character. Giving feedback isn't to say, I don't trust you. I think you're sloppy. I think you are lazy, that kind of thing. It's much more about, I'm noticing that when a difficult task, I'm noticing that when I ask you to update this Excel spreadsheet, update an Excel spreadsheet, that you often slow down. What about Excel is tricky for you? What about Excel makes you slow down? So you're noticing what's going on, but not saying, clearly you're not good at doing Excel. That's not helpful, and it doesn't show that you're meeting them where they are. The next thought, provide context. So this has a lot of implications, but it's very difficult to adjust, make changes, and even get aligned with the feedback you're receiving if too much time goes by between the time that the thing is happening and that it's sort of generic. You always, you never, etc. Again, back to here's what I'm noticing. Last time we convened a team meeting, you were very quiet. It's helpful when everyone joins in the conversation. What might help you feel more comfortable joining in conversation in our team meetings? So again, you see, I notice the time and the place and the behavior. So the person actually knows what you're talking about and is making a connection. State what you saw without jumping to conclusions. I've kind of addressed that already, but I noticed that you're not joining in our team conversations. You might not go so far as to say, I'm guessing you're very shy. I'm guessing you're not comfortable presenting in front of Joe or Sally. No, let them come to you and describe to you what might be getting in their way from participating. It's so easy to jump to conclusions. And if our conclusions are wrong, you're very likely to ostracize the person, excuse me. Okay, explain the impact. So when Jen and I were talking about this situation the other day, I told her what my reaction was, but she also made it possible for me to say what I was concerned about. And then Jen could say, well, we've done this for this reason, and I'm going to talk to others to understand the implication for this email that I sent on them. So we created this opportunity to explore why it mattered what the tone of the email was, for an example. That wasn't exactly right, but so there is an implication. If you never speak up in a meeting, other people might start backing away from engaging as well, and we won't get the most creative solutions, i.e. there's an implication to what's going on with the way you are or not engaging. And this is where Jen and I are talking today about providing suggestions. And it goes great back to the chit chat about advice. There may be times where when you are providing feedback, you want to say to the person that you're talking to, do you want to brainstorm an idea, a solution? Do you want to talk about ways this could be done differently? How can I be helpful? There are also many, many times where the final bullet on this list is using open-ended or powerful questions. How can I be helpful to you now? With new awareness around this priority, what can I help you take off your plate so that you have more time for this? What other kinds of open-ended questions are you all thinking about that might be different from just problem solving for the person who you're talking to about feedback? Anybody? And Jen, anything in this long chit chat that's going on here that you want to share with the team?
I was just replying to the comment, trying to give some examples, which was timely because it was, slightly off of using the model here as best as I could in a very fast typing sentence.
Okay.
But I just want to reiterate what you just said there at the end, because I think this was super important. So we can walk through this model. We can use this as a baseline, and this really can be used, of course, for both positive and critical. It's a framework. It's designed to help you to step through all the critical pieces. But I do think what Betsy's saying about this last part, providing suggestions, you don't need to have that pressure of being able to always provide that great suggestion. To her point, it might be, hey, would you like to brainstorm some ideas? Or what do you think might be a better way we could do this in the future? Something that really engages that person on the other end, so that it also helps them to not only have received that feedback better, but they're a part of designing that future, which makes them most likely going to be something that they're going to do at all. Because if Betsy just tells me, Jen, I don't want you to do that ever again, here's an alternative, maybe that sinks in, maybe it doesn't. Or maybe I said, well, what do you think if I did this? And she's like, that sounds great. And it's something I was able to help design, and I can move forward. And it's something I'm then invested in, I'm engaged in, I'm interested in, versus just feeling like, okay, someone's just bossing me around and telling me what to do.
Yeah. The image that's coming to mind right now, and hopefully this is an image that many of you can relate to, but is, around feedback. If you were working on a team in sports, you're trying to become an Olympian of some sort. And you hire somebody to give you feedback, if you're a runner, about your gait, if you're a gymnast, about your posture. I mean, I'm making these things up, but whatever they may be. Without that feedback, you will not be successful. The person may not tell you, I need you to stand up straighter, but they may say, I'm noticing that your posture doesn't demonstrate authority. What are some ideas you have for how to demonstrate authority with your body? So, the person tries to bring the best out of you. Maybe you decide you want to brainstorm together, maybe not. Okay. And yes, Alyssa, we often use all of these steps in giving feedback. It's not a perfect model. Jen reminded me today, you can break this down and make it as simple as this. I'll say to Jen, in that last email that you sent out, what went well? Jen says X, Y, Z. And then I say, well, I noticed that what went well is you really caught our attention. And then I'll say to Jen, what could have gone better? And she'll say X, Y, Z. And I'll state, I hear you say next time you want to try to do this. Or, there's probably a lot of conversation in there, but ask what went well, state what went well, ask what could have gone better, state what could have gone better. It's the simplest framework of all. Quickly, and because I want to make sure we have time for Q&A, but preparation. Sometimes we have to give feedback off the cuff and we're not able to get fully prepared, but sometimes we do have a chance to prepare for the feedback. And if you do, it makes it a lot easier. The more you prepare, just like for anything else, the easier it gets. Like anything else where it might be a touchy situation, think about your best case and worst case scenario. Whether or not you need to play that whole thing out in your mind, detail by detail, that's up to you. What I think we mostly rely on in this second bullet point is how the person might react and what that might trigger in yourself. If this person gets angry, how am I going to be? If this person acts defensive, how do I want to be? How do I take self-control to manage my way through this? Maybe you need to go so far as to practice this conversation in the mirror with your peers, a friend, your dog. Commit to a goal on how often you want to give feedback. This is sort of random. For me, it's really more around how open do I want to be to giving feedback? How do I want to get more comfortable giving feedback more often? And that being said, we don't want to be that kind of person who's like, great job, great job, great job. If you give too much feedback, i.e. just to give feedback, just to practice that muscle, pretty soon people don't hear you or take you seriously. So you want your feedback to be taken seriously. You want to give feedback when it's merited, or you think it will help move things forward in some way. And then preparing feedback in your style, but also a style that accommodates the person with whom you're communicating.
Betsy, this is Jen. I just want to add one thing, because I think what you were saying toward the end there is just so important. We don't talk a lot today in this conversation about that positive feedback, and there's so much value that it brings to building trust. But to Betsy's point, if it's not genuine, if it's not authentic, or it's just repeated like a broken record nonstop, it's not going to add the value. If anything, it could be detrimental. So when you're thinking about positive feedback, make sure what you're really thinking about is the sort of ability to provide really specific and actionable positive feedback too. So I always give this silly example, like, let's say we leave this workshop, and instead of just going, hey, Betsy, great job, I say, Betsy, I really like that workshop today. You did a great job, specifically when you were delivering the framework and you answered questions in a timely manner. Those are specific things that she can use the next time she has a workshop, and she can learn and grow from. So, hey, good job is pretty much like saying, thanks for showing up to work. And I think that's why a lot of managers hesitate to give positive feedback, because they don't want to just be telling people thanks for coming to work. They want it to be meaningful. So just lean into that. How can I make it super specific? And how can I deliver feedback that people are going to care about and be able to take action for future growth on?
Great. Thanks, Jen. And Nicole, I see that your question came up, and can you just hold on and make sure we hold that for the very end, because it's a really important question. So just sit tight, but don't let me forget to address it. When and where to give feedback, probably kind of wrote. Timely delivery is important. What is timely? That depends on the circumstances. When the person is calm and in good headspace, and frankly, that goes back to this question of, is this a good time for me to give you some feedback? Beware of feedback fatigue. Too much, can't take it. Here she comes again, telling me something. Thoughtful about when, where, and why. Thoughtful about progress versus preference. In other words, we try really hard, and this could be the subject of a whole separate webinar. Is the person getting to the place they need to get? Is the work getting done that needs to get done? Or are you nitpicking, micromanaging the way they do things? If the way that the thing is getting done matters to the team's success, the project's outcome, yes, maybe the way they do it is important. But if the way they do it is just not the way you would prefer to do it, you need to decide how you want to deliver your feedback. Again, that is the robust topic that we could talk about for a really long time, that leans heavily into the types of things we coach our clients around, which is deciding when to engage with the people on your team and about what topics. Typically, giving feedback in private is an easier way to do it. That being said, acknowledging somebody for a job well done, especially like Jen said, with some details, can be really, really effective. So sometimes the feedback can be done out loud, in person, in front of other people. And everything we talked about, providing the feedback in a way that the person receiving it can receive it and take note. And then validate for understanding. And this is effective in so many of our communications and such a great tool as you consider the growth of your own leadership. But we often assume that other people understand what we said, and they actually understand it very differently. You cannot assume that other people understood exactly what you said. So we really recommend in so many important communications that you validate for understanding. If this person reports to you, you may go so far as to say, can you tell me back what you think we just agreed upon? Can you restate what I just said to you in your own words? There may be other ways for you to ask that kind of question, but you want to make sure that at the end of this conversation, you're on the same page with the person that you're communicating with. You can also ask about next steps. So we both agreed X, Y, Z. What are you planning to do next? By when do you want to do it? How can I be helpful? What can I do to make it easier for you to succeed? Any other questions on this page? This is a huge communications tactic that we use, as I said, with our clients in many, many settings. Jen, anything here?
No,
Okay.
nothing new.
Okay, so I'm excited because I'm excited to be able to answer a couple of questions. Long story short, getting in your own head about what makes feedback easy, hard, and how you can get better at receiving it and giving it is probably the most important work that you can do. It's really critical to understand the relationship that you have with feedback and what makes it difficult. Practice using the feedback framework we've provided to support your conversation. And please let us know if you come up with new ideas or different ways of giving and receiving feedback that we haven't covered today. It's a very organic process, and we learn by doing. Take the time to prepare and then validate for understanding as best as you possibly can, using open-ended questions as often as you can. And ask us. We're here to support you both with our ongoing webinars, all kinds of blog posts that are open and accessible to you on our website, and of course, in workshops that you bring to your company or individual coaching that you decide to invest in either for yourself or ask your company to invest in for you. Practice makes everything easier. We all know that. Can you start testing things that you want to start doing, stop doing, and continue doing now to see how these tactics will make your feedback cycle easier and better for you? Okay. We have so many tools at ALV, and Jen is one of the people who's just building them each and every day. I've mentioned a few of those things in passing. We have all kinds of frameworks for the important things that we're helping our leaders get better at doing to elevate their leadership. We have blog posts, we have newsletters, and I think all of you will start receiving links to those. We have models that we share with our clients in one-on-one coaching, and we ask them to be accountable for testing the new things that they're practicing. We recommend books and resources outside of ALV, but we also have an extensive library of modules that are delivered electronically through our site that once you become a member, you have access to. You can see in the one that I'm showing you here, you would type in your answers to the provocative questions that are posed to you there, the content and the thought starters. And you would share your input with the coach that you're working with. And often that brings up whole new topics and areas of exploration for your coaching. This is another blog post on feedback as an example. And so you see there's all kinds of ways that you can engage with Ama La Vida. I'm seeing some of you are starting to chat about your experience with Ama La Vida coaches, which is great. We're here to help. We're here to help right now and answer your questions. We're here to help on an ongoing basis. You can check out our site to see all of the coaches that are available to you through Ama La Vida, their various expertise and backgrounds. And or if you're interested, you can reach out to me via this bit.ly link, and we can set up a time to have a strategy session on some of the biggest topics that you see in front of you that might help you escalate or elevate, as we say, your own leadership. Oh, and I see everyone's loving Coach Kate. So I don't know if Kate's on the phone, but we'll let her know that she's getting all kinds of kudos. And with that, we'll open up to Q&A. I was going to go back to one question that came up from...
I just repasted them right there in the chat for you, Betsy. I don't know if you can see it, or I can read them to you if you'd like.
Okay, sure. Just go ahead and read them. So
Okay, so the first one, what if your feedback is that the person seems to be closed off or defensive about feedback? How I can make it actionable?
Okay. So help me if I'm not understanding the question correctly, but where my gut reaction to this is, what kinds of powerful open-ended question can you ask to this person or people to make the topic of feedback the topic that you can discuss? So perhaps I'm noticing that when we start talking about feedback, it feels like it's a really tough topic. It feels like you're backing away a little bit. What's that about? What would make it easier for us to have an open conversation on this topic?
Yeah, I love that, Betsy. I think it goes back to what Betsy was saying earlier, even just using the power of the coaching question to dive in and learn more and kind of figure out what's going on. I think that quick feedback framework can be really great too, that Betsy mentioned there, especially if there's something that you see, there's an area that person makes a lot of mistakes, or there's an area that they do exceptionally well and you want to give them positive feedback. It really could be for either. That way you could come out of that meeting, what went well in that meeting? Here's what I think went well. What could have gone better? Here's what I think could have gone better. And that just starts to create that two-way dialogue. And the more you create that culture of feedback, the easier it's going to be and the less resistance to feedback around feedback that you will have.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see Monica asked an interesting question. Sometimes it might depend on cultural decoding, as communication styles are different, and cultural, and for sure, even gender. I think we notice a lot with our clients, how certain genders like to give and receive feedback differently. Who has some thoughts around managing the fact that people are going to show up to give and receive feedback differently? Any thoughts around that? Any of you coaches and or any of you happy participants?
I think for me, it just goes exactly back to what you were saying earlier about really kind of learning everyone's style, the example you gave with your client, and telling them, hey, just ask the question, how does everyone like to give and receive feedback? Knowing that everyone's just going to be so different. And then where's the balance for you? How do you, because you can't be constantly, even yourself, being pulled all around. So if one person wants it one way and someone's completely different, we got to lean into that, but we also have to make it sustainable and manageable for you. So really thinking through where the balance is there.
Yeah, and I'll use another real life example for this, which is I was working with a client yesterday. He has a team of consultants who report to him. And he told me that they need to track their hours very carefully, the consultants, and report in. But no matter what happens, one of the consultants on the team always says he worked exactly 40 hours, exactly to the minute. And it's not feasible that that's the case. And in order to bill clients appropriately, they need to know how many hours this person has actually worked. And he's tried many different forms of feedback, but the person comes from another culture. And in that culture, you are not allowed to report if you work more than the 40 hours. So we decided yesterday that he needs to test saying, not giving him feedback, but actually saying it as a directive. There may be cases. This is what's at stake. You must report your actual hours. This is not a stylistic thing or a point of view. So sometimes you have to decide when feedback might not be appropriate and you need to draw a line in order to get breakthrough. Faith, as a retired educator, yes, meet people where they are, for sure, for sure. Takes a lot of very, very careful listening skills and observational skills to understand what's really going on with somebody. Definitely a topic for coaching. How do you ask for clarity without getting misunderstood for being condescending? Any other suggestions you guys may have? So my best recommendation on that, watch your tone. We all know about tone. Ask for feedback to people you trust on the tone you use in important conversations, because it's just tricky. And the second thing is ask the person with whom you're talking, this is something that I want to try to make sure we're on the same page. I'd love to ask you to be able to reiterate back to me what you just heard me say to make sure we're on the same page, i.e., there's a reason for this. It's not you being a mom saying, did you hear me? Don't slam the door one more time. There's a reason for this. And if the reason is you both want to see both of you succeed, there may be a rationale.
Yeah, I love what Betsy said there. I think queuing it up that way in the beginning is really helpful. The other thing that I've suggested that some of my clients like is instead of sort of asking them to, repeat back what was said or something, you might even say something like, so given what we've talked about today, what might be the first step that you're going to take? Or what's the first action you're going to take? Or something that just gets a demonstration of, okay, they got the message. Like they may not repeat it all back to you, but it's clear, given step 1, 2, and 3, they're going to move forward. And that's all in tone, right? I can say, so this has been a great conversation. What do you think your first step out of today will be? Or I can say, so what's the first step you're going to take? And I mean, both of those are the same question and the tone completely changes it.
Yeah.
So to Betsy's point, tone is huge too.
Yeah, I like that question. And Faith, you're raising such an important point that what about in writing, text, Slack, email, where tone cannot be detected. To me, I think it's an agreement with the person in advance. And it also goes back to the initial advice that we talked about, which is how do you best receive feedback? If things are getting murky because you're giving and receiving feedback via email or text or in writing in some capacity, then maybe you and the person have to agree that you're not going to communicate in writing around tricky topics until you come up with a cadence and an agreement around feedback that makes sense. Because I get it. It's so easy to misinterpret things that are in writing when the person isn't face to face. Kelly, I use a useful tool I learned in relationship counseling is the awareness wheel. I don't know about the awareness wheel. I don't know if anyone wants to stay on. We have a couple more minutes if Kelly wants to lean into that, or I can do a little research and find out about it myself, and Jill and I can share it with you. Or Kelly, email us separately and tell us about it. Anybody else, anything that we can offer up, share, tell you about that's going on at Ama La Vida? Jill, do you want to chime in and just tell them about a couple upcoming things that are on the roster?
Absolutely. Yes. So I'm going to share. So we do have, are you in terms of just the promos that we have going on? Awesome. Yes.
Exactly. And also some of our future webinars.
Yes. So if you are not already, well, I guess you already are signed up if you are here today, so you'll be able to receive our events newsletters. But for any upcoming, you know what, actually, I haven't pulled all the leadership ones yet, Betsy, so give me a second on those.
Yeah, and you can send it in the follow-up email as well.
Yes. And also, yes. So everything that we discussed, all resources, the recording, which is, we have our YouTube channel as well that Jen mentioned. I'll include the recording, all of the resources that we shared. So the leadership quiz, the feedback form, and a few other things that Betsy and Jen had mentioned. And also we have a special promo going on until May 15th. It's 25% off your first month. So I'll include the code and more information on that. So anyone who is new to or interested in exploring leadership coaching with us, you have a special promo just for you. So I'll include all of that in the email as well, so that you guys can go ahead and just schedule that complimentary consult or strategy session with Betsy. I will include both of those links in there as well.
Great. Thanks to all of you for all this robust chat conversation. I know this whole, whenever something ends up being around your own self-awareness and deciding how you want to throw yourself at something new and different, it can get really, really exhausting. But we get energized by these topics and would love to work with you more on any of them, any topics that come up. So definitely use Ama La Vida as a resource going forward.
And
thanks again for helping out, Jill.
yes, thank
Britt.
you. I was just going to say, and if you have any feedback for us, see what I did there, feedback for us on just today or any other topics, or, you know, anything else that, you know, that you guys are interested in, or any other challenges that you're currently experiencing. We always cater to you, our community, and our clients. So anything that you have for us, just let us know. We will graciously accept your feedback.
Yes, or at least we'll try.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you everyone so much. All right. We'll be in touch.